Conflicting endings of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So before I move on any further, I will say this video is going to have major spoilers for Clair Obscur. So if you haven't played the game yet, haven't finished it, I don't recommend watching this. But if you have, this is something I want to talk about. So there I was, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just trying to really think about what happened at the end of this game, and I was really letting it sink in. I would spend some time walking around, thinking about it. I sat down to write about it. I wasn't really going to make a video about this, but I figured that as the game is still fresh in my mind after I finished it, I might as well just make a video about it and before I move on to the next game that I'm playing. In my heart of hearts, I knew for sure what ending I was going to end up picking anyway, but I wanted to see what both endings look like, so I first played through the Mael ending, and then I played through the Verso ending to kind of finish it off for me. And I felt very conflicted about both endings, and I know for sure even after looking at both endings, which one I feel more confident to say is the better ending for me personally. But I still felt that this was the first time that I had ever played through a game and got to the ending, and both endings just felt very, very complicated. And that's really the word that I'm gonna use to describe this: conflicting, complicated, complex. I think these are all words that kind of describe where the ending of this game left me. I feel most games in general that have multiple endings make it very obvious what each of the endings represent. So I feel that in general, most games will let you know that this is the good ending, this is the bad ending, this is a neutral ending, and this is some wacky alternative ending that this game offers. And I think what makes this different for Expedition 33 is that usually with other endings, you have to go out of your way to find how to get to that ending, or how to get to the true ending, or get to how to get to this wacky ending or whatever. But instead with Expedition 33, it just gives you the choice at the very end. It just lets you know, are you going to play as Mael, or are you going to play as Verso? And the ending is very like whatever ending this game, and whatever ending you get with this game is really up to the player at the end of the day, because it really depends on what their values, their worldview, what they personally identify with. That really all plays a role in how we get to this ending. The best way I can describe the two endings separately is that I think the best description I saw was red pill versus blue pill, whereas Verso's ending is sort of like the red pill, and Mael's ending is the blue pill, where the fantasy keeps going and the red pill is facing the reality. But even that's a little bit complicated to describe as well, because when you take in all the context of the story, and you take in the context of just everything that you gain throughout the game, the choice is a lot more complicated than just red pill and blue pill. Whereas Verso's ending will be more about accepting reality as it is and moving on and letting the family move on. Mael's ending is more so a continuation of keeping this painting alive, of keeping Verso's soul alive, and continuing the fantasy, and just letting the game play out more, keeping Verso alive. Verso's ending feels like there's like a finality to the game, versus Mael's ending feels like a continuation of his despair, so to say. And Mael, in a sense, is escaping just based on what we know so far from the story. But I'm going to go a little bit more into the story of the game and how we got to this point, so I'll go into that. A big reason that I felt conflicted about the ending is that you get to know these characters from the very beginning of the story. You see Gustav, and you see Lune, and you see Ciel. You see how their characters develop throughout the whole story. You become pretty much attached to this world that you're playing through, and you see and you feel that the world that is taking place in this game is very real and very alive. And then you see what the expeditions before have gone through, and you see that this is like a story of people, despite their circumstances, are trying their best to pave the way for the next generation that comes forward. It's a big theme that recurs a lot throughout the story, where you get phrases like, when one falls, we continue, when you get phrases like "for those who come after" and "tomorrow comes," like these are all phrases that get repeated throughout the story, and you feel that with yourself as you play through the story, that you identify with these ideas and you want these characters to succeed in their mission. And because you get attached to all of these characters, you get attached to the world around you. The ending from for Verso feels very complicated because it involves destroying everything that these characters have fought for throughout the entirety of the story, throughout the entirety of the world that they've been a part of. So I'm gonna go a bit more into Mael's ending. In Mael's ending feels like the comfort ending. Everybody sort of lives happily ever after. That's sort of the sense that you feel. You see Verso at the piano. You know, as a part of his character, that he's always wanted to play an instrument and he's wanted to play in front of an audience. And it seems like in this part of the story, Mael is giving him that chance to do that. But at the same time that all of this is happening, you see all the other characters that have previously died. So like for example, Gustav and Sophie are alive and well in this story, and then you see Ciel with her husband. These are all things that make you feel, at least like when I saw it, like it feels like not real. It feels very fake, and that's the best way I can describe it because it sort of takes away the sort of sadness and frustration that you felt when Gustav first passed away, and that sadness that you felt when Sophie got Gamage at the very beginning of the game. It just made the game. It sort of just took that away, and then I felt it in myself as I was watching through this ending that this, like, none of this is real. Like none of this is. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel genuine. And then you see Verso's face as he's going up to play the piano. He looks very unhappy. He does not want to be a part of this. He does not want to engage with any of this. But in a sense, he's kind of forced to because he's because the soul of Verso is what's keeping this canvas alive. It's what's keeping this whole world living and alive and as it is. And then there's like this really unsettling moment where they're kind of panning over to the different faces of all the characters, and the music is just very uncomfortable. I mean, everything's in black and white. Verso looks very unhappy. There's this heavy breathing, and then as like right after you get like a zoom in on Lune's face, it just jumps and like makes like a little loud noise where you see Mayol's face with like the painted eyes, and it seems like the same thing that happened to her mother is now happening to her. And then it seems like Verso is letting out like this big sigh, and he starts to play, and then that's where the ending cuts. And to me, it just felt very uncomfortable. It did not feel right. It sort of seemed like there was like this happily ever after ending where everybody's alive and everybody who died is now back to life, and it seems like Mayo is like this ever powerful force in this painting now, but Verso has to deal with just being a part of it, and he doesn't want to be a part of it. And he very clearly says after you beat him with Mael that he doesn't want this life. He doesn't want to continue on with this life, and so you just kind of feel bad for him. But then it also proves the point that Renoir was right in that the same thing that was happening to Mael's mother is now happening to Mael herself in this ending. And now I'll talk about Verso's ending. So Verso's ending was a lot more bittersweet, and I did feel for him as a character. I think throughout as I played through the entirety of Act Two, I grew to and I ended up growing to really like his character a lot. And I do feel that, and I think a lot of people have talked about this too, where Verso seems to be a compulsive liar, as in like he lies throughout the entirety of the story to get what he needs to get to where he needs to get to. And then there's also the analysis of one of the accents, the Mask Keeper, who it says he who guards truth with lies. So it's definitely a part of his character that he's a compulsive liar. I did feel like this ending was a lot more honest, and in a sense, it was. We see the exhaustion that Verso feels, and then we also see because we also know that Versal's been alive in this world for a very, very long time, and his whole world is based on like this grief that, at least like the world that he's been a part of, has been in constant battle with itself because his mother and Renoir are constantly fighting each other, and then the fracture happened, and then all these characters are going on these expeditions. He becomes friends with all of these people, and then he sees them all die before him, and because he can't die, then he's just witnessing all of his friends pass away. And he's exhausted, and then I felt it even more when he went into the when he went to go see the little boy, the little painter boy, at the end of the story, where he even asked him if he's tired of painting, and we get a nod from like that from the little painted boy that he's tired and it's okay for him to stop painting, and then Mayo stops him from doing that, and then they get into this fight. And so for me, it just felt right that Versal's ending would be the ending that makes the most sense out of the two. You get this feeling that he's been forced to live this life because of somebody else's grief. They're not letting him go, they're not letting him die. And he's at a point right now where he's been alive for so long that he just needs to die. He wants his family to let him go. He wants to move on. And that the only way that this family can move on is by letting the canvas dissolve. So after the canvas dissolves, the world returns to reality. Mael is seen back, and they're all having like this funeral for Verso, and there's like a little scene of like them waving goodbye. I think everything that really played out in the Verso ending was really nice. I think seeing Eski and Monoko come up to Verso and hug him as he's facing his last moments, and then they all fade away. Him saying that he's gonna miss those guys, like I just think that was just beautiful to see. Him telling Mael too that she's gonna be okay, that she's got the power to paint. She doesn't have to live in a world where that she could paint her own worlds as well. And then seeing CL also come up to say her goodbyes, not really say her goodbyes, but kind of like have this moment with Verso, and then Lune's stare down. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty crazy, but I also feel like that's also like the other part of it that makes the ending complicated, is that because she was a character that existed in this world, that existed in this painted world, and she's the one who was repeatedly saying, "When one falls, we continue." And so everything at this point that she's known in terms of like the expeditions, the world around her, it's all meaningless. There's no point. But then she sits down and faces it head on, and I think that was like a nice touch for that ending. There was that moment afterwards when they're saying goodbye. They're saying their goodbyes. Mael sees all of the characters, Verso, Gustav, Eski, Monoko, Ciel, Lune. They're all saying their goodbyes, and it's a very nice ending. With accepting that reality, and it's sort of a sense that like, yeah, this game is like done. It does give a finality to the game because the canvas no longer exists at this point, and so it does give it that like, this is the final, this is the ending, this is over with, and I am interested to see where they take this world after this game. And it made me think about other endings in other games that have to do with letting go, and because I had played Persona 5 previously, there was also that ending as well with the game where there was sort of like this, like, are you going to choose a world that's fake, or are you going to choose reality? And because I already knew what I picked in that at that point in the game, I already felt that my own personal beliefs would align to the ending of Versos. Now, despite me feeling the way I feel about the ending and how I feel that Versos' ending is the right ending, I do think that there were a lot of valid arguments that I saw online about each ending, and I think that's why it's so complicated and it's so conflicting. Is that what I wanted to talk about is that throughout the whole game, you are getting to know these characters and this world, and you feel like this world is a very real like world. It's a very real part of like what the characters are going through. And when we get to Act 3, it is just like a slap in the face. The game just like literally grabs you by the shoulders, looks at you dead in the face, and then slaps you across the face. Because that was when you learn about like what this world actually is. You learn that Mael is actually Alicia in the real world, and then you learn that Verso is her brother, and then you learn um, that this is actually just a fight between like the mother and the father, and her dealing with her grief, and Renoir trying to bring his wife back and save his family. This all changes the way you see the world. It changes the way that you see how the whole game has happened, because now you see this world as like it's actually just been this painting that was created, and the people that live in it suffer, but they're at the behest of like these people that are outside of it. So I think that whole reveal was just insane to me. That whole reveal was crazy to me, because it made this game from like this is a journey that friends are taking to beat like these ever present forces, and then boom, it's actually just this painted world, and they're not really real, quote unquote, but you feel that they are real because, and I think the comparison that I saw somebody make online was that we could think of like the painters as being like gods, and then they created this world, and that these are very living, real people. Because now when you're choosing the two endings, there is an ethical dilemma to consider, and I think one of the ethical dilemmas that somebody talked about was, and I remember learning about this in high school, the trolley problem. I think that is one way to describe this ending, is that you are, at least depending on how you see the painted characters in the story, you're either choosing the family that is has created this world and like helping them move on. You're choosing to save the painted people in this world, the all the characters that we've got to experience. I do think that having seen both endings themselves, I do feel that you do get a sense that Mael's ending just doesn't feel right, and the world itself feels just like at the behest of her, and she's able to kind of create like this happy. She's able to create this happy ending for herself, but to do it at the expense of Verso, and not really fully moving on. And you can see even like through that small glimpse, that image that pops up is her eyes and her painted eyes, and you see that it is doing damage to her. So it's kind of hard to really like say that's the better ending. But that's the thing though, is that because that's these are the ethical problems that this ending presents, is the canvas beings their right to exist, because we know that these characters, they think, they feel, they dream, they have their own aspirations, they want to live longer. And at one point, there was, in a sense, like a part of the story that was saying that Verso wanted the painting to still survive. He wanted the beings in this painting to still survive, but that when he saw how it was affecting his mother, and how it was affecting his mother, he knows that there is no way for this painting to really survive without the family on the outside suffering. And Verso's just tired at the end of it all. Verso's a tired character. He's done with it all. He's done seeing his friends pass away. And then Mael wants to still be a part of this world. She wants to still be with the characters in it. But now she's forcing Verso to deal with being a part of this, a part of the world that she's created now. And maybe Mael will never fully recover from this, and Verso's kind of just kept alive for his soul is what's keeping this painting alive. So at the end, there doesn't really feel like a correct answer, because there's just so much that goes into it. Now, I know personally, for me, the Verso ending is the right ending because it does offer the finality to the game. But that's without taking into consideration the ethical dilemmas that come with it, because the ethical dilemmas around this really do make it more complicated. Do you see the canvas beings as having a right to exist? Do you see this world as being totally, wholly separate from reality? I don't know. It's pretty complicated. Either way, both endings aren't fully represented as being good versus bad. It's more so just personal preferences at the end of the day, and like, what do you personally believe is the right answer? And it really makes you think about it, because it did make me, like, it did force myself to think, like, in terms of reflection, like, what did I think about the characters in this story? What do I think about the implications of Verso being kept alive to feed into Mael's escapism? What do I think about grief? What do I think about the concept of grief? Can characters really move on? There's that fear of letting go, and I think that is very valid. That there are a lot of people who do feel, there are people who feel that the Mael ending is right ending. And maybe potentially in the future there could be a way to solve the issue of keeping the painting alive without it hurting the family. Now, I don't think my preference is the best. Like, I don't think my preference is the best. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm not gonna do that. I think there are a lot of like crazy arguments on the internet, and I don't think people should kind of talk down to each other about what ending they think is the better ending. I think Sandfall Interactive was able to provide an ending that was very complicated in terms of just gaming in general, and I think it is one of the better endings that I've ever seen in a game, because it really does force you to think about the ending as like a choice between two things, about two different values and all that. I think this game is a very beautiful game. I think it is definitely one of the most. This game is one of the most beautiful games that I've ever played, and I think the ending was just like the cherry on top. I usually don't feel like there's a lot of games that have like just endings that I feel like, oh yeah, that was solid. That was a solid ending. I think there are some games with solid endings, and I just feel like this game, on top of like the combat, the gameplay, the storytelling, the symbolism, the art direction, the like how the game looks in general, like how the characters talk to each other, the dialogue, the story, everything about this game is amazing. And I think the ending just takes it up a notch too, because I really enjoyed the ending a lot, and I think I really enjoyed looking into what other people had to say about the ending, because it is a very complicated ending and there are many different opinions about it, and I am interested in hearing those opinions. So like I said, I didn't really think about making this video because I didn't want to kind of make a video about Clair Obscur right away, because I had just finished it and I know that it just won Game of the Year, but I feel like maybe just as it was fresh in my mind, I wanted to just talk about it, tell my thoughts, provide my thoughts on it, because I do think this game is amazing, and the ending just left me thinking a lot, and so I'm curious to see what other people think, so you can like write down in the comments what you personally think. I'll try to respond, but yeah, those are my thoughts on the ending of Clair Obscur, and thank you for listening. I really appreciate people listening to what I have to say, so I'll leave it at that. Alright, bye.